all alone. Through the flames to summer lingers on, though hoping just to shelter. Thomas S. Eiselberg was a tremendous Monopoly player, and he used to begin his game by tearing around the board for the green set with Oxford Street, Regent Street and Bond Street. And in real life he actually owned these properties, and one day it struck him that they were remarkably dull. So he put some rope up across the streets and suspended from it some of the most famous men and women who'd been executed unjustly. Well, he hung them on thick rubber ropes so that if you were tall enough and had tremendous energy, you could leap off the pavement, catch hold of their feet and swing merrily in the street. This was very exciting. For the children, their eyes had been scraped out and replaced by little red light bulbs that would go flash, 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 which used to light up at 6:30 p.m. precisely when the electricity was a lot cheaper. This song was written for Thomas, by Thomas. It's called Stagnation. And dramatic pause. Here today, the red sky tells his tale. But the only watching eyes are mine. There is peace amongst the hills, and the night will cover all my pride. Blessed are they who smile from what is free. Seems to me like any other crowd who are waiting to be saved. wash away the past. My long lost friend is smiling from above, smiling at my tears. Come, we'll walk the path to take us to my home. Keep outside the night. The ice cold night has come to decorate the dead somehow, and each will find a home, and there will still be time for loving my friend. You are there. Or will I wait forever beside the silent mirror at fish vomit terminals amongst the weeds and slimy water? Could you move forward a bit? Apparently there's some people who can't get in the back. So have you got any space? That would be appreciated. Gods were very busy. One particular product of all this busyness was a little child by the name of Hermaphroditus. And his parents, the gods Hermes and Aphrodite, were very ashamed that he existed at all. So they stuck him on a mountain in the middle of Greece in the hope that he would never reach anybody and no one would discover his existence. For years on the mountain, he went walking one day and he went through these trees until he came across this lake that he'd never seen before. And when he went down to the water's edge, there seemed to be something swimming towards him from the bottom of the lake. And sure enough, this was a fully grown water nymph. The water nymph was named Salmacis, and she'd been 350 years at the bottom of the lake without a male. And the effect of this virile young man was really too much for her metabolism, and she was filled with lust and other commodities. Her seduction was a total failure. So in desperation, she looked up to the heavens and said, "Dear gods, I beg that we two down here shall never be separated." And the gods, being crafty old bastards, sent down this big black cloud, melted the man and the woman, and bunged them all together in one neat little hermaphrodite. The boy didn't like this at all, actually, and he laid a curse on the water, turning all who touched it into hermaphrodites likewise. This song is dedicated to the Tesco chain of supermarkets, without who none of this would have been possible. It's called the Fountain of Salmacis. The tube train was absolutely packed full of people. It was just approaching Piccadilly Circus when it stopped, ground to a halt somewhat mysteriously. In the last carriage there was a young lady in a green trouser suit, and she got up when the train stopped, moved to the centre of the carriage, and began very slowly to undo the buttons of her trouser top. Then slowly she peeled it off and let it drop to the floor. She repeated this process on her trousers, on her blouse, her brassiere, and her little panties. This left her totally naked. She then moved one hand in between her legs and began to fiddle about a bit, until she caught hold of a zip. And she pulled the zip right up her body, through her face, over her head and down the back of her spine, and working her fingers meticulously into the crack that the zip had left, she pulled her body in two neat little slices, which fell to the floor also, splat. This, however, left a strange golden shimmering rod in the place where she'd been standing. There'd been total silence in the carriage up to this point, but a large middle-aged lady who was wearing a pink poodle got up at this point. It was really too much for her. "Stop this, it's disgusting," she shouted. The golden rod disappeared, leaving the trouser suit on a cleaning hanger with a ticket on the left arm. That was totally relevant to this song, which is called Twilight Alehouse.
Saying, are you really sure there's nobody coming for me? When I'm walking home, there is no one. Once there was a house full of laughter, so warm. Pretend there is someone who will care when I need it. I will now receive my comfort, contained by the magic of the I let that dream about me. Just a minute, I let that dream about me. When I walk outside, there is nowhere. Children follow me with their laughter, so cold. Just a glance at the churchyard, casting just a glance at my painted female friend. Now I'm on my way, I am falling, trying to pretend there is someone. I will now receive my comfort, punctured by the magic of the wanted. I let that dream about me alive. I let that dream about me alive. To my sorrow, I think I do not know tomorrow. go to our game of croquet?
Went the usual cry from little Henrietta, and her brother Henry was once again unable to resist the game of croquet. Out he went onto the pitch, and just as play was about to commence, his little sister raised a croquet mallet high in the air. With one fair swoop, totally removed little Henry's head. This killed him. 2 weeks later, she was wandering about in his room and she came across this old musical box which used to play the tune of Old King Cole. And as she opened the box and the tune began to play, a strange, somewhat familiar pair of green knickerbockers were mysteriously lowered from the ceiling. Into these little Henry was dropped. He'd been given a second life, and always a bit on the randy side. The first thing he did was grab himself a young lady and lead her up the old wooden stairs into the attic to show off his very fine water tank. The nurse was downstairs, heard these noises, so she rushed up to join them, picked up the musical box and smashed it into the bearded child, destroying both. However, in the middle of this number, we're going to play some of Old King Cole. We've arranged for a small pair of satin green knickerbockers to be lowered from the centre of the ceiling on the stage, into which, fresh from the Sky Night studios, will be dropped a naked Patrick Moore. Keep your eyes skinned. This is the musical box.
Play me the old King Cole, that I may join with you. All your hearts now seem so far from me. It hardly seems to matter now. And the nurse will tell you lies of a kingdom beyond the skies. But I'm lost within this half world. It hardly seems to matter now. Play me my song. Here it goes again. Play me my song. Here it goes again. Just a little bit more time to live out my life. La 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 la. was you. So he called for his pipe, and he called for his bowl, and he called for his fiddler's dream. But the clock tick-tock on the mantelpiece, and I want, and I feel, and I touch, and I know. She's a lady, she's got time. Brush back your hair and let me get to know your face. She's a lady, she is mine. Oh, brush past your hair and let me get to know your face.
Well, anyway, what we've done just to brighten up the occasion is we've disguised 6 people to look exactly like John Lennon. Now, if you can correctly identify the real John Lennon, tap him on the left shoulder and say into his ear, "Hello, Bouncy Bouncy, what are you doing after the show?" You'll win yourself a golden opportunity to enter the Spot Spiny Norman competition. Spiny Norman. Spiny Norman is here with one imposter. If you can correctly identify the real Spiny Norman, you'll win yourself a glorious, sun-filled honeymoon holiday with our Prime Minister, Edward Heath, on board the Morning Cloud. A never-to-be-missed opportunity. This is the last number tonight. It's called The Return of the Giant Hogweed. very much. This is a bit of vintage Genesis. Thank you very much.